Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Guy Yedwab. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Explore Analytics. And we're going to talk today about how SLA reporting for service providers can help drive client satisfaction, right? So giving transparency to whether it's internal or external clients, how that can help, get that visibility and get that transparency in such a way that it really transforms the client's perception of your service delivery. So I'm going to do just a brief overview in terms of why Explore Analytics is talking about this today and how it fits into your organization, and then I'll show some live examples of where some of the power of this is. But to start with, kind of why are we having this conversation today? When I go and I've worked with IT organizations in a lot of different industries and from a lot of different directions, but one thing I hear consistently is that the expectations that clients have is growing all the time. Specifically, what I hear over and over again is that clients are expecting real-time visibility, right? So they want to see, it's no longer sufficient to see last quarter's, results 6 weeks into this quarter. People want to know what's going on right now. And they want to have more questions answered. Having just how many incidents were opened is not really satisfying their demand for data and understanding what's going on. So they want more sophisticated analytics applied. I saw a customer present a week ago where, up until this point, mean time to resolve has been sufficient, but they wanted to see, outliers, and they wanted to dig deeper into that and use more sophisticated approaches to analytics. And as always, they want to have that fully interactive. They want to have it on their mobile phone. They want to have it on their tablet. They want to have it embedded into their user interfaces. So they're not sufficient with, getting those reports on your terms. They really want to have those reports brought straight to them. And of course, the biggest expectation that underpins all of this is that they want it now, right? They don't want a 2-month or even a 4 or 6 week turnaround. They want to be able to reach out with a question and get a report or get an analysis within hours or a few days to be able to get that. They want it now. So when you think about how to meet those expectations, for a lot of organizations, it means really changing the approach. So what are clients doing today to get the answers to that? So often what we see is that if a client has a advanced report request, something that goes beyond the number of SLAs that are currently open, they'll make a request. And on your end, you'll need a report developer who's going to have to write an integration to copy data from multiple sources together if it's on multiple tables or in multiple sources of data, or they want to see it in a different format, and so you have to write some SQL code or write some JavaScript to clean up the data and apply advanced analysis to it. And of course, what happens? You give that to the client, and immediately they want to see it differently. They want to group it differently or slice into the data. And as you can see from the client's perspective, this can be a very frustrating process because there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of waiting. And from your side, there's frustration as well because there's resource bottlenecks. It takes time to deliver those to the customer, and it's a lot of manual work to get these reports. But the real danger is that clients are actually being served in a different way. And the way that clients are actually being served is the client will send you a request to get the data, typically in a spreadsheet, and then they will work on it in Excel. I think most of the time when I speak to IT organizations, operations organizations, whatever reporting strategy is in place, at the end of the day, a lot of work is winding up going into Excel. And why is that? Excel is, we talk a lot about shadow IT in terms of, cloud infrastructure or in terms of other services, but Excel reports are the shadow IT of business intelligence. Users like Excel reports because they can reformat the data to match the way they think it should look in terminology that makes sense to the business. But in that process, they can also wind up changing data or breaking it, meaning the report might look good, but they don't actually know if it's telling them real information. Users like Excel because any user, regardless of skill set, can create some pretty sophisticated analysis. But it's a manual process, it's time consuming, and it often needs to be redone. Users can get the information they want, but the information is already stale and suspect the moment that they have it. So the question is, can service providers give real-time dashboards that have quality data, that are deeply interactive, and has no limits on the type of reports or the format of the reports that the users get? And can you do it now? So the good news is that Explore Analytics can do it, and we'll walk through some real-world use cases and show the tool doing this in real time. But one of the keys for you is that Explore Analytics is built around very easy building of these reports. So everything I'm going to show you, you can build for yourself in just a few clicks without requiring SQL, without requiring any kind of advanced analysis. So I'll show that as we get into the demo in just a moment. The other key is that we have both real-time as well as trend reports, and we can do it across multiple data sources without copying data around. As a service provider, you may not be in control of where the data is coming from. You may have to deal with different siloed tools and different siloed organizations. We want to give you that capability to really see across it. And we want you to be able to make those changes in the reports, not through administrative work that requires definition and change control to be able to roll out, and have that be something that's repeatable and scalable. And the advantage to your clients is that the reports will all be real time with drill down access wherever they want to use it. And they'll have a lot of rich capability to slice and dice the reports, and no limits on what type of reports are possible. Really, any kind of question they want to answer, we want to make that just a few clicks away. So the way that we're able to do this is that Explore Analytics is a cloud-based service, and we reach out in real time to a number of different data sources. So if you want to do some of these SLA reports, we run a query to ServiceNow, gather the data, and present that to the user. Same with a MySQL or an Oracle database. When they load the reports, we query in real time, we gather that information, and we show it back to the user. So you don't have to copy your SLA data out of ServiceNow. You don't have to copy your call data out of a call system into Explore Analytics. You don't have to build that data warehouse, which means we dealt with a Fortune 50 manufacturing company that had live aging reports and mean time to resolution in production within an hour of signing up for an Explore Analytics free trial. So all of that power is available to you in just a few minutes. So I'm going to transition to showing some of Explore Analytics and some of those capabilities and how you can really focus on getting that SLA transparency in a real way. And I'll show some examples and some things I've seen with clients along that way. So in this example, I'm presenting this dashboard. This is an Explore Analytics dashboard embedded in the ServiceNow user interface. I could also embed individual Explore Analytics reports on an out-of-the-box ServiceNow homepage. So this is an example of using the pre-built ServiceNow dashboards with Explore Analytics content. But regardless of how you want to show this to the user can log in seamlessly through ServiceNow. They don't have to go to a separate portal, and they can see a lot of information at a glance. At the top, I have my key KPIs here, so I can see, for example, this is the % SLA achieved, and I can see the trend line, and I can see how that's changed month over month or quarter over quarter. But it's not just this KPI. If I want to dig in and say, okay, what contributed to this availability number? And I can say, oh, here's actually a very detailed pivot report that's showing me what was the average time of each outage, what was the total time of each outage, a calculation to tell me the % uptime and the mean time between failures, all here in my fingertips right from within that scorecard. So it makes it very easy for me to go from that breadth down to another report that gets me a lot of depth. And again, I did this without having to, be an administrator or do anything from that perspective. Now, a lot of these reports, some of them are trended over time, but some of them are live. So for our current SLAs, I have it broken down by, what areas that covers. And I have, slicers that I can use a drop down to very easily, get that information. So as a customer, they don't need to ask for, okay, give me one report for this group or give me one report for a different group or a different company. Just by using these drop downs, the users can get that information for themselves. You'll save yourself a lot of time and overhead by providing the user the capability to reformat and see things for themselves. Similarly, in this real-time report, I have the ability to drill down very easily. So if I'm looking at this, over half of our current SLAs are because of, issues relating to software. So if I want to dig into that, I can say, okay, well, show that to me by the company that's against. And, oh, it looks like a big part of that is North America, so let me see within that company how that breaks down by department or, further into location. So you see, I'm going multiple levels into this data to understand more of what's going on. And if I want to see the details, I can click on View Details, and I'll actually get those individual SLAs or those individual incidents, and I can click to open that up, the form of that in ServiceNow. So even with just one report, the slicers and the drill down paths combine to give me a lot of richness to be able to answer questions and follow-up questions and get deep into the data. Now, for any of these reports, I can open this up full screen if I want to see this in more data. Now, this is a report that's showing me the % of met SLAs over time. And again, I can look at just a section of this report. I can also say I'd like to see this as a line chart because I prefer to see it this way. And I can kind of scroll through time over that. You'll notice that now in a line chart, I have this trend line, and it's actually forecasting for me into the future. That's something that the customer themselves can project. So if they'd actually prefer to see this as a straight line projection or see what the median of this data is, as a viewer of the report, I can get a lot of this richness built in here. It really comes down to what you want to give your users to be able to do with this data. But things like exponential projections and being able to do something like compare this year over year, all of that is something that as a user who's viewing this data, I can do for myself. And if I want to see this geographically or really view the information like context of in a calendar, what P1s or changes might be impacting those SLAs, I have this all at my fingertips because I can see very broadly across whatever processes I'm interested in. So with that said, we've taken a look at how this can be very interactive. The other thing I want to mention is that this can be very contextual, which is important when you're dealing with a lot of clients. So I'm going to look at, this is an example of Explore Analytics being presented through a web portal. So, through an HTML or a Google Sites or an intranet portal, if you want to give the client, their information in a way that's relevant to them, you can do that. This one is also contextual, so it's actually showing me all the information based on business services, and it's dynamically filtering based on who I am. So it's only showing me the information for my business services. This is a current outage that's going on that's tied to business services that have me listed as the owner. So rather than having to create 100 different reports for 100 different services, we're creating one report and we're filtering it based on what the person who's logged in is interested in. And all of these reports reflect that capability. So you can start to think about where can we make these scalable dashboards where one person comes in and sees the information that's relevant to them. That kind of contextual nature is really important for clients to be able to feel like, yes, this is the data I'm interested in seeing. So up until this point, we've talked about the transparency and how easy it is for the customers to get this information. I also want to talk a little bit about the richness of being able to see, what data is available and how easy that is to create. So I'm going to go into the report building interface, and we're going to create an SLA report from scratch that's going to be a little bit sophisticated. Let's suppose our customer has reached out and said that they'd like to see how the time to deliver on an SLA has changed quarter over quarter or year over year. So I'm going to look at my incident SLA data, and there's an autocomplete to tell me what information I'm looking at. And we're going to start with a pivot analysis. My SLA pivot analysis. Again, this is the kind of ad hoc reporting that you might typically see your organization or your customer's organization doing in Excel. So I want to create a pivot, and we're going to break that down by the caller's company. So I'm walking that relationship to the company. And I just drag that into the rows to get the company, and I'm actually going to relabel that so the word company is what we see. And then I also want to break it down by when it was opened, by year, and by quarter. So I drag that into the columns. And you'll notice that it allows me to select what parts of that date time field I want to use. So we're going to use year and quarter. And we're actually going to do it in such a way that for each row, we'll see the year, and the quarters will be there. Lastly, instead of showing me a count, what I really am wanting to look at is what that actual elapsed time was. We'll say the average, right? So the average time spent delivering those SLAs, year over year, quarter over quarter. And maybe rather than showing it in terms of the length of time, what we're really interested in is seeing how that has changed. So a percent difference from. I could compare company by company, but I'd actually like to see this year over year for the same quarter. So now what I can see very easily is for Acme Australia, we cut the time to deliver by 20% in Q1 of 2016 as compared to Q1 of 2015. So we're really comparing apples to apples over the time of the year. So what I have is a real-time report that's doing some actual data analysis. It's got some sophisticated information that it's gathering. It's got some calculations. And it didn't require me to do any JavaScript or any analysis, anything that a user couldn't do in Excel, but it actually has the real-time data. It's really drillable to the data that sits behind it. So it's very easy for me to really take action on this information. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some use cases I've seen to see, how these capabilities let you answer more sophisticated questions. So one is an example that I got from a retail client, which was that they were looking at, not just SLAs in terms of, how in general is it doing, but they wanted to measure relative to a major release at a particular location. So they used some capabilities that we have to combine data from multiple tables and to do calculations. But you'll notice that they reformatted this report so that it's not on what day were these incidents logged, but it's a delta of how many days from the major release. So starting from 10 days before the release, through the release, and then the 10 days afterwards. And they could compare this location by location if they wanted to see if this was more or less successful at particular locations. Again, being able to have a real-time automated report, but have that control as to, in this case, it's a delta of days, but you could show exactly the same data in terms of a line that's marked pre-deployment and post-deployment, right, as a timeline. Often to have that level of control, people are manually, building this in Excel, when you really don't need to do that with Explore Analytics. You can get this in an automated way, but in real business language. Another example is looking at what percent of tickets were handled internally versus externally. So in this case, it's a straightforward report, internal versus external. But under the covers, there's a complication here. In this set of data, I don't actually have a flag that tells me whether it's internal or whether it's external data in my data source. But without making any changes to the data source, I took advantage of a calculation capability to say, okay, if the company starts with Acme, which is the name of our outsourcer, we're going to relabel that to be external. And for all other assignment groups, we're going to relabel that to be internal. So that allows us to have this calculated flag of was it handled internally or externally that runs this report, manually. or in an automated way. Without Explore Analytics, you would have to pull this data into Excel and then add that field, or you would need to deploy a change to your ServiceNow or deploy a change to your system of record to be able to calculate with business logic those flags. Here, we're allowing you to automate those differences and deploy that. Lastly, I want to show you the capabilities that we have when it comes to combining data from multiple sources. So as a service provider, I may not have control over where the data is stored. There might be multiple sources that the data needs to come from. So this is an example of a trend of incidents by priority. And some of this data is in instance A, and some of it is in actually a separate ServiceNow environment, instance B. But just by creating these two individual reports, I can say, create a new mashup view, and we'll say input 1, instance A, input 1, instance B. I'll call this combined view. Now, because both of those are, a count that's grouped by the priority, Explore Analytics actually knows to combine this together because we had the label on both to be count. Explore Analytics combines this together, regardless of the fact that under the covers, one is coming from this one ServiceNow environment and the other one is coming from another one. So you can show clients a seamless set of data, even though under the covers, it's coming from multiple different sources, and I didn't have to copy or move the data to accomplish that. And if I want to take this a step further, I can actually add a trend of calls from a call system. Right, so this is from a MySQL database that has the trend of calls, and now this number of calls is a separate set of information, and now I have this line that's showing me the volume of calls overlaid with the incidents by priority or SLAs by achievement. So you can really get a lot of breadth of data in the way that the customer wants to see it in one user interface. So we've showed a lot of different examples of being able to provide that SLA and incident transparency to customers in a very consolidated way. So whether you want to be measuring, the percent of SLAs that are achieved, or something like this stability of service SLAs that we showed in there, however you want to show that, you're going to be able to do that in a real time and a very interactive way. So we're reaching towards the end of the call, but if there's any questions, you can use the chat that's on the webinar to be able to ask any questions, and I will make sure to answer them. Great. So one question is, how can you get your hands on to give this a shot and see some of this information? So at my.exploreanalytics.com or through our website, you can get to this. There's a sign up for a free 30-day trial. It's fully featured, so you can connect it directly to your data. All that's required to connect to your data, if you go to add a new data source, you can connect directly to ServiceNow by putting an update set and providing a service account, and then we'll automate the setup from there. Or you can connect to other sources of data. If I go to add a new data source and select something like Oracle, that's also as easy as providing connection information in a service account, and will automatically connect. So you can start to build these kinds of reports, and you can try that out for yourself. Great. So a question came in. This dashboard that we're looking at, can we publish it to a ServiceNow homepage? And the answer is absolutely yes. So what I do is I go to File and I say Publish. So it'll give me this, this name. And if I check off Publish to ServiceNow, it'll automatically create a block that can be added to any ServiceNow dashboard to be able to view that. So if I click Finish, I get a URL, so you can also link someone directly to this. I get an embed code, so I could put this in an HTML portal. Or if I go to my ServiceNow dashboard, the out-of-the-box ServiceNow homepages, I can click Add Content, and ServiceNow will give me the option to be able to add it to my dashboard. The other thing that you can do with these dashboards is you can actually schedule them to be sent out as well. So, for folks who are used to seeing this information in their email inbox, you can say, okay, we're going to, on a regular basis, schedule this. You can even have it be scheduled to send as a frozen dashboard where all the data will be from the time that it was run. So at a weekend, get the frozen version of the dashboard and say what email addresses you want to send it to and what schedule, daily, every 2 weeks, however you need to send that data out. It's a great question. Thank you. Great. Another question came in about kind of how to learn more. Obviously, you can respond back to any of the invites to this webinar, and we'd be happy to show you more information. There's also, if you're logged in, there's links to our user's guide, which has product documentation, tutorials, which will include the recording of this webinar once it's posted, and you can reach out to Explore Analytics, and we'd be happy to help show that to you. Great, and there was a question in terms of, with Explore Analytics, pre-built content and pre-built reports. So we have something that we call our IT Service Management Analytical Application. And the analytical application is a set of pre-built dashboards and reports around SLAs, around incident, problem, change, the service catalog. So, some of the reports that you've seen today in terms of SLAs by class or by assignment group, trending over time, mean time between failures and things like that, we have that pre-built as part of that application. We also have a link to this ServiceNow instance with this demo site if you want to see those pre-built reports, and we'd be happy to help provide that for you. Great. So thank you for joining today. If there are more questions that come up later, or if you'd like to reach out, again, you can respond to the emails that have the invite to this, or contact us through our website. We'd be happy to get deeper in or schedule a hands-on session with some of your specific SLA reports. But we're very excited that you've joined, and we're looking forward to see what SLA reports you deploy in your environment soon. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.